Welcome to episode 9 in our series of Energy Markets Talks. Hans Grünfeld is joining us. Hans is the Managing Director of Royal Dutch VEMW, which is the Association for Large Energy Users in the Netherlands. Thanks, Hans, for joining.
Well, thanks for the invitation. It's great to join your program.
Thank you. Your members are increasingly important players in the energy markets, and many of them, well, especially the industrial ones, I think, are facing great challenges to decarbonize their energy use, either through sourcing renewables or through making drastic changes in their production facilities. Now, to what extent has this COVID crisis impacted decarbonization investment decisions for large energy users, you think?
Well, that's quite a complex question, because well, over the last the period of the last 4 or 5 months has been a roller coaster for most energy users, including industrial users, of course. I mean, to a certain extent, demand has fallen sharply for companies that are involved in oil refinery, for example, or in steel production. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, in the food industries, obviously demand has been hard to actually meet, particularly with logistical issues. Some parts of the chemical industries have been operating in order to meet the increasing demands from the healthcare sector, but also, for example, one of our members is producing innovative plastics, which have been in great demand to be used as protective material for not only for personnel protection, but also for glasses to be used in hospitals. Mm-hmm. Others, for example, those who are producing oxygen, have seen increasing demand from the healthcare sector on the one hand, and the other hand, dropping demand from the industrial sector, particularly refineries. So it's a sort of a mixed bag of developments. Meanwhile, the various authorities, the European Commission, but also national authorities, particularly also the Dutch government, have been debating recovery programs, and there seems to be one sort of constant factor in all those approaches, which is an emphasis on sustainability, on speeding up the decarbonization programs. And therefore, despite the crisis and despite the great uncertainty and other challenges that most industrials have faced, the decarbonization programs have more or less continued to take a lot of management time and effort.
Okay.
But that's not to say that obviously there will be an impact of the COVID crisis, particularly if it's followed by a deep economic crisis, on the, let's say, on the timing of the decarbonization. I'm not so much concerned that decarbonization towards 2020 will be weakened or will be halted. I mean, one thing is very, very clear. There's no alternative. There's no doubt that decarbonization is the future of the industry. The question is what impact the COVID crisis will have on the time frame, on the timing of the various investments. I wouldn't be surprised if there will be some slowdown of investment in the short term, which might be speeded up later in the towards the mid-20s and later on.
Yeah. Well, something else in the Netherlands recently, politics and also public opinion turned very much against biomass suddenly as a part of the transition. This is also something that may happen in other European countries. What is VEMW's view on this sudden shift?
Well, we were somewhat surprised by the sudden change of mood, if you wish, in particularly in certain political circles about biomass. We know that particularly NGOs have waged fierce campaigns against the use of biomass, particularly in the for energy generation. Though we thought that there were clear agreements both in 2013 when we signed the energy agreement, national energy agreement, as well as last year with the conclusion of the national climate agreement, that biomass, particularly if it's if it's sustainable biomass, is a inevitable source of renewable energy generation, at least for the years to come. This is not a particularly Dutch phenomenon. If you look at the countries around us, which may or may not have more alternative options, biomass plays a major role in renewable energy production, both in terms of fuels as well as electricity and heat. So we are not very pleased with the sudden uncertainty caused by a renewed discussion on the use of biomass. For us, biomass is extremely important, not just for energy generation, but also for as a feedstock as an alternative feedstock for fossil-based feedstock in the chemical industries, and therefore for us the development of supply chains, starting with the energy use in the energy system, to be followed up later on when technology is developed also for the chemical and other industries, is very important. Is an important ingredient for the decarbonization of the energy sector and the industrial sectors, and therefore uncertainty about the use of biomass, about the conditions as well as the subsidies, is a very unwelcome phenomenon, and should be avoided as much as possible. I mean, that's not to say that we are in favor of using biomass for heat and power production for an indefinite period. Certainly not. I mean, there are better uses for biomass, but at least for the short term, for the period up to let's say the 2030, it's inevitable that we need to use biomass in order to raise the renewable energy production.
Well, nevertheless, your members are always involved in many innovative energy projects. You've helped us in the past also to select a few interesting projects to showcase at our event. Is there any particular project that's upcoming now that you would recommend us to keep a close eye on? Something one of your members is involved in?
I think there are a number of very, very interesting projects going on. I mean, first of all, there is this flagship project in CCS, which should come on stream, which is the Portos project in the Rotterdam port area. We're anxious to see the final hurdles being taken, hurdles in terms of licensing, for example, but also the subsidy scheme, which should be concluded by the end of this year. We hope that everything is set to start with the procedures for 2021 and the years to come. So that's one of the projects, and there are also a number of hydrogen, very interesting hydrogen projects, both green hydrogen as well as blue hydrogen projects. And last but certainly not least, also we see a lot of projects in the area of electrification, both in terms of heat, so electric or hybrid boilers, heat pumps on the one hand, but also for the somewhat longer term. There is a very interesting consortium being built by Shell and Dow to develop large scale electrical installations, cracker installations, or to be used in the crackers, which will be a huge change of the industry if those are going to be successful in the coming 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so despite of the crisis, there's still plenty of interesting stuff going on.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's not just the Dutch climate agreement which is speeding up those projects. With the I've been involved in a task force trying to identify the infrastructure barriers for the decarbonization of the industry, as well as obviously making suggestions for how to solve these barriers. There's a lot of work to be done. On the other hand, if you look at the opportunities, particularly in the Netherlands, due to our geographical location, the extensive infrastructure which is already there, part of which can be used, for example, the natural gas infrastructure, both onshore as well as offshore, which can be used later on for hydrogen and for CO2. For our links with the German and Flemish industrial areas. So I think there are huge opportunities, and I see a lot of activity and a lot of appetite in the industry to grasp those opportunity, as well as, by the way, from the government. And the recent developments in Brussels with the Green Deal and the ambitions of the European Commission, they are very helpful in order to speed up those developments. And despite the COVID-19 crisis, I think most companies are continuing to work on these projects, particularly because these are not projects for, let's say, the months to come, but really long-term projects, which require a long period of preparation, the setting up of alliances with coalitions with other companies, with government, with knowledge organizations. So there's a lot of dynamic which is not easily stopped, and certainly not by the COVID-19 crisis. Now, that's not to say that obviously we are still waiting for to see what's happening in the autumn. I hope that the economic crisis will be minor compared to what some expected at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. But if there is a major global recession, obviously things will slow down.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing your ideas and your thoughts, Hans.
Thank you.